It's a bird, it's a plane. No, it's... Hello fellow cinephiles, Film Guru here. What I'm going to begin to do in the next few weeks is do a lot of reviews on Superman orientated sort of things. I'm a huge Superman fan and I really want to talk a bit about what I like about it, different incarnations of it, the movies, the comics, the animated series, things like that. And I really want to sort of talk about what I like about each of these sort of things. So each week I'm going to do a different video talking about a particular Superman movie, and then we'll go on from there. So the first sort of film that I really want to start with is obviously Superman the movie, the original film that came out in 1978, was directed by Richard Donner and starred Christopher Reeves, Gene Hackman and Margot Kidder. It was really the grandfather of these sort of films. It was really the prototype superhero movie before superhero movies like now have just taken over. And this first film is really great because it tells the whole story. It talks about the destruction of Krypton and how his parents sent him to Earth, how the Kents took him in and became his parents, and how his powers slowly developed through that time. We get to see him at high school, a little bit anyway. We get to meet Lana Lang, that was featured a lot in the Smallville TV series. And it sort of talks about his life, and we get to see his powers in action, him be able to run faster than a locomotive and things like that, and being really, really quick. And also looks at the death of Jonathan Kent and the journey that young Clark Kent goes on to try and find out who he is and where he fits in this world. And the creation of his Fortress of Solitude, with using a crystal that was with him in his spaceship that when it crashed to Earth, and it creates this place. He spends the next few years in this sort of Fortress of Solitude that is very famous within the Superman mythology, and learns about who he is, and by the end of it he becomes Superman. And then it looks at him getting a job at the Daily Planet as bumbling reporter Clark Kent, and then subsequently meeting Lois Lane, played by Margot Kidder. First real villain he comes up against, Lex Luthor, played by Gene Hackman. And what subsequently transpires is a race against time, trying to stop Lex Luthor from accomplishing his plans and destroying things via rockets. And throughout the film he finally becomes Superman. He gets a suit, he reveals himself to the public. They get to see him in action, car chases and a variety of other things, and stopping criminals ultimately. This film is fantastic. It's one of my favourite movies. It's in my top 10 of favourite films of all time. I'm really impressed with it in many ways, and I've seen it a number of times. There are ultimately 3 versions of the film. There's the original theatrical version, there's a special edition which is a bit longer, and then there's a Blu-ray, and this to me is the best way to find it. It's the ultimate edition because it combines both of those into one sort of film. What can I say? Superman is just fantastic. I like the morals of the character. I like the struggles he goes through, how he's trying to fit in this sort of world, how he's starting to stop bad guys by not hurting anybody else and stopping them from hurting people. He's a very stand-up sort of character, and relatable in a way, the human side of him anyway. Ultimately not his superpowers, because we don't all have superpowers, but ultimately his human side we can relate to, I guess, him trying to fit into this sort of world. All the acting is really great in this. Christopher Reeves is fantastic as Superman and his alter ego Clark Kent. And this was the first time Clark Kent had been played like a bumbling sort of fool in a way. In all the other incarnations of him in the comics and the old George Reeves TV show, he was very strong and stern and a great sort of powerful and strong man and a reporter. And to me, by having him like that, it's a bit strange why they didn't know Clark Kent was Superman, because they're sort of similar, where this was trying something different. It was the only way that Christopher Reeves felt he could play both characters, to play Clark Kent as a bit of a bumbling character, so people wouldn't assume or think, or even think he was Superman. And then he played Superman straighter and sort of a bit more fun in a way, but it was sort of like a Boy Scout sort of performance. He played Superman sort of like a Boy Scout, doing all the right things, trying to stop the bad people. And his portrayal of that is fantastic. And ultimately the way they make him fly, and the way that Christopher Reeves used his arms and his body to create the idea of flight was just really fantastic. Margot Kidder is really brilliant here. I think it's one of her best performances, and in my opinion, she's the best Lois Lane that I've seen, with Kate Bosworth coming a very close second from Superman Returns. I think her performance was really great as well. Margot Kidder is really strong here, great sort of female. She has great moments in it. Yes, she does get in trouble that Superman has to save her, but she's also a very strong and capable woman as well. And he's a very good reporter within this sort of world and this storyline. And Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor is brilliant. He's the best Lex Luthor in my opinion. No one comes close to his performance. He's sinister, but also has this ability of being humorous and sort of real in a way. And when he comes up against Superman, you can tell he's struggling with it, and you can see how smart he is and what he's trying to accomplish. And it's quite interesting to watch. The visual effects are fantastic. The way they make him fly through the city. The earthquake that transpires, uses a lot of models and a lot of old school techniques, which I really love. I love that sort of stuff. Christopher Reeve is, I think, a solid actor in this. He gives some great performances. There's some great scenes that are quite powerful. The main one that comes to mind is at the end. Well, this is a bit of a spoil if you haven't seen it, so maybe you should stop watching the video at this point and go and watch the movie. But if you know what's happening, and I'll be surprised if there isn't most people who have seen this at some point in their life. So ultimately, there's an earthquake, and Lois Lane dies, and he comes to pull the car out, and he's too late. He's been trying to stop these rockets from destroying the Earth, and he wasn't able to get to her in time. And he pulls her out knowing she's dead, and he does this moment where he starts saying no, 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 and then he has this angry face and he screams, and it's such a powerful thing, and he screams as he shoots up into the sky and ultimately reverses the Earth to bring her back is what they sort of go with. But it's just that moment that scream and that powerful moment that he provides just gives Superman a much more powerful moment and scene than you usually would see in these sort of films. Richard Donner's done a really great job here. It feels very interesting. It captures Superman very well, I think. It captures the full story. Ultimately, we get to see the whole story of Superman, not just a portion of it, where a lot of the other films focus on different aspects of it. This was the first film that really looked at the whole storyline. And like I said, it was the very first film of its kind. There had been no other films previous to it like this. And it subsequently went on to do 3 other sequels. And also Batman came out not long after it. So those 2 films are very iconic at the start, before we're so saturated now with comic book films. They were the beginning. They ultimately said on the poster that they will show a man flying. They ultimately accomplished that. It was all shot in England. It was written by the guy who wrote The Godfather, and I found that a kind of interesting but odd choice. But he's sort of crafted a really great script, I felt. Brando's really great in it as well, as playing Jor-El, Superman's father, and I think he does a really great performance there. He sort of plays it in an English way, and there's an interesting story about the way he played it. In his later career, he didn't really care about learning lines. He felt he wanted to be spontaneous and to hear the line and just express it as he did. So sometimes you wear an earpiece, but in this it was ultimately, the script was written on particular places that he would look at, and then he would just react to that sort of dialogue in that scene. And that's ultimately how he portrayed this sort of character. The only thing I would say about it, more of a critique, not really a criticism, is it is a product of the 70s. It's very dated in the clothing, in the vehicles, in what was transpiring at the time. So it is a little dated in that, but that doesn't matter to me because I'm such a fan of it. I can just watch it every now and again, and it doesn't matter how dated it does look. I still get a lot out of it and thoroughly enjoy it, and is one of the best superhero films I think that was ever made. The 3 sequels that did follow it weren't as good. The second one was alright, and there was a Richard Donner cut because Richard Donner was originally meant to direct the second film, but he was fired from it and someone else came in and took over. There is a version that exists now where Rich Donner has ultimately a lot of Superman 2 was what he wanted, but there were certain sequences they changed, and he's able to put in these sort of sequences into this film. There's a lot of them are rehearsals and bits and pieces, and it doesn't flow perfectly, but it's just interesting to see his version. I would have loved to have seen his original version rather than the version that did transpire. And the other 2 sequels were great, but Christopher Reeve is always solid in every one of them, and he's really great here, and I'm a real huge fan of this, and I think it should be in the 1001 movies you must see before you die, but it's not. There's 2 Batman films in, the original and Dark Knight, and I just feel Superman should be in there for what they were able to accomplish with it. Anyway, ultimately that's the first review I want to do of the Superman films. The next one I'm going to do is Superman Returns, then Man of Steel, then Batman v Superman, then Justice League. And with Batman v Superman and Justice League, I'm just going to focus on the Superman aspects of those films and not do a full review of either of those films, but more of the Superman aspects to it. I ultimately want to do some reviews on some great comic books that he appeared in, and the way that the character has evolved from when it was created in 1938 to now, and how different it can be in certain aspects, in certain incarnations. There is Superman All-Star comic, which anyone who's a fan of Superman should really read. It's a really, really great comic. Anyway, that's all from me today. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoy this video, and I hope you enjoy the next lot of videos I'm going to be doing on Superman. And if you're a fan of Superman, stick around, because there's some great films and great things to come from the canon of Superman. From me today, thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed what you've heard here, please hit subscribe down the bottom. Otherwise, until next time, enjoy the movies.